All right, let's see what we have today. Apparently, this Muslim said something shocking. So let's see.
So you think every human being except Muhammad and God had sins?
But yeah, God is not a human being, so yeah, except Muhammad.
Would you think it's okay for anyone to have a sex slave?
No.
No, of course not. That would be horrible. But that's what Muhammad had.
Here, this person is a Christian. He says it's horrible, horrendous, and they're talking about sins for someone to have a sex slave. That's his terminology. So let's see what this Christian is going to tell us.
It says, it was narrated from Anas that the Messenger of Allah had a female slave with whom he had intercourse.
In Islam, you can.
Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ had Milk-al-Yamin. This term slave is incorrect. But let's hear what else he has to say as well before I comment on that.
Have the sex life only if you were in a war. If you won, you can take their stuff, right? And you can take one of their women and have a sex life with her. But that was before. Now you can't. There is no wars like this.
Okay, well, first of all, there are wars that are occurring today. But the problem is, if that was okay even back then, that's horrible. You can't take a woman from the enemy country and have her as a sex slave.
Okay, so he's saying, look, even if you're telling me, a Muslim person, that this doesn't exist today, even if that was in the past, that is terrible, that's horrible. You cannot take a woman in war. You cannot do that. Okay, let's continue. We're just seeing here the Christian argument, right? The Christian narrative.
That's horrible. The morality of Christianity far surpasses the morality of Islam.
You see, so the morality of Christianity surpasses Islam, and no such thing can exist in Christianity, you know? It's just Islam, man. How could you guys have something like this?
If that was ever okay as a thing, and even Muhammad did it, that's not someone I want to follow.
If that was ever okay, and Prophet Muhammad did or anyone did, that's not something I would want to follow. If that was ever okay, look at the terminology. And you look at the comments of these poor Christians. Jesus is the only way. You can never have, it doesn't matter, state of war or peace. You cannot have, slavery is horrible, etc. These are the comments on this video. But it baffles me, honestly. It really, really, really baffles me that Christians can talk about slavery or sex slavery or any of these things. Like, honestly, have you even opened or read your book? Like, it really shocks me to the largest extent. Whatever the Bible, Old and New Testament, says about slavery and what you do to slaves and whatever, there isn't any scripture on the planet that has anything similar to that. Of course, Islam has nowhere near anywhere what the Bible says. But what the Bible says is like, it's crazy. I'm going to read for you some verses now from the Old and New Testament about slavery in Christianity. Of course, I'm going to answer this whole part about sex slavery or whatever in Islam. I'm going to respond to that. But first, I want to show this hypocrisy, clear, outright hypocrisy of these Christians. So let's read some of the verses in the Bible about slavery. So if you go to the Old Testament, for example, you go to Deuteronomy chapter 20, and you start reading from verse 10, for example. It says, when you draw near a city to fight against it, offer it terms of peace. So you come near a city, you're going to fight against the city, offer them peace. And if it answers you to peace, and it opens to you. So now I'm going to go and say, oh, guys, look, I'm offering you peace. If they give you peace, then all the people who are found in it shall serve you and shall do forced labor for you. So all of them are going to be your slaves. So imagine you go to a city, not even fighting, but you go to a city and you offer them peace. And these guys accept peace. So take all of the people as slaves and make them do forced labor for you. The Bible, huh? The morality of Christianity that surpasses Islam. Let's continue reading. You haven't even seen anything yet. But if it makes no peace, but makes war against you, so if it doesn't do peace, then what do? Besiege it. And when the Lord gives it into your hand, then put all its males to the sword. So eliminate all the males. But the women, the women, and little ones, the little girls, that are under puberty, the little girls that haven't had intercourse with a man, the virgins, what do you do with them? And everything else in the city and its spoil, you shall take for yourself, and you shall enjoy the spoil of your enemies. Okay, so this is the far superior morality of Christianity, okay? Have you seen anything? No, not yet. Okay, we go to the Leviticus. What does Leviticus say? Leviticus 25, you can read from verse 44 to 46. It says, as for your male and female slaves, so we have here male, female slaves in Christianity and Judaism, by the way, both of them. Whom you have, you may buy male and female slaves from among the nations around you. So if someone is around you, foreigners, people who are not from your nation, they're not Israelites, whatever, you can buy and sell female slaves, no problem. What are you going to do with the female slaves? We all know. You may also buy from among the strangers and the families around you, etc. And then it says, and they may be your property. Now, I challenge anyone to bring me any verse in the Quran or a hadith that says that the Milk-al-Yamin, which is not a slave, which I'm going to go and explain, is a property. But the Bible is explicitly, clearly telling you, look, these people are your property. You buy these female slaves or male slaves, and they're your property. And you can give them to your sons, the next verse, and inherit them as possession because they're property. In Islam, there's no such thing. Milk-al-Yamin is not inherited. It's not given to the son. It's not given. They don't remain as Milk-al-Yamin. If the master dies, they're free. No such thing. But in Christianity, you want the superior morality, you inherit them. And you may make slaves of them. But over your brethren from the Israelites, oh, you cannot do that. You don't do that. So the Bible now tells you not only that you buy and sell these female slaves and you enjoy them and you do what you like, they're your property. Is that it? Oh, we're far from over. You go to Exodus chapter 21, verse 7 to 11. Very, very interesting. When a man sells his daughter as a slave. Yes. You heard me correctly. The Bible is teaching you, if you want to sell your own daughter, which doesn't exist in Islam, and to my knowledge, any other religion, as far as I'm aware from what I've read, maybe Hinduism, something. But when a man sells his own daughter, this is what the verses are saying. Let's read. When a man sells his daughter as a slave, okay, what happens? She will not be freed at the end of 6 years as the men are. So at the end of 6 years, the men might be freed, but the woman, no, she's not going to be freed. If she does not satisfy her owner, I wonder, like, how is she going to satisfy? How is your daughter, which you've sold as a slave, how does she not satisfy her owner? I wonder, honestly. The superior morality of Christianity, the biblical superior morality. You must allow her to be brought back. But he is not allowed to sell her to foreigners. No, don't sell her to foreigners. Other Israelites, this and that, it's okay. Since he is the one who broke the contract with her. That, honestly, like, I don't know what to tell you anymore. I don't know what to tell you. It's telling you selling your own daughter as a slave, and you're talking about Islam and whatever. This is your religion of Christianity. Is that it? No. Let's go to Exodus. Exodus chapter 21, verse 20 to 21. What does it say? It says, anyone who beats their male or female, woman or man, there's no, there's no discrimination, and there's no feminism according to the Bible. It's the same, If you beat your male or female slave with a rod, if the slave dies as a result, consequence, you should be punished. But what if the slave doesn't die? It says, but if the slave doesn't die, you beat them, but they don't die. So you beat them to death, but they don't die. They recover after a day or two. No problem. You're not to be punished because they are your property. That is what the Bible is telling you, is teaching you in Exodus chapter 21, verse 21. Now, you get some Christians saying, oh, no, that's the Old Testament, whatever. Who cares if it's the Old or New Testament? It's your God, the Trinity, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Jesus, who was a part of the Trinity, he sent these commands to the Israelites. And your video that I'm commenting on right now says, at any time, if this ever happened, that's horrendous. That was your words. But I'm going to even give you another icing on the cake. It's not just the Old Testament that mentions these things, these teachings or these behaviors or whatever. It's also the New Testament. So, for example, if we go to Ephesians 6, verse 5, it says, slaves, so slaves exist. Obey your earthly master with respect and fear and with sincerity of heart. So it's telling them to obey the earthly masters with fear, just as you would obey Christ. So it's literally telling them, obey your master like you obey God. Because in the Christian belief, and these Christians that are talking, in their belief, Jesus is God. So it's saying to the slave, obey your master like you obey God. New Testament. Here. Is that it? No. We go to Luke. Luke chapter 12, verse 47. Talks about if a servant doesn't obey his Lord's will. And that servant which knows his Lord's will and does not prepare himself nor did according to his will shall be beating with many straps. It talks about beating your slave who doesn't prepare himself and he doesn't follow the will of his master, basically his Lord, meaning his master. There's many other verses I can go on and on and on. So it always baffles me and shocks me how these Christians who have such verses, which are unlike anywhere else, any other religion, come and talk to Muslims about 6 slaves and not 6 slaves. It's crazy. Now, when it comes to this idea of slavery in Islam, now I have a full long video on this topic on my channel, but I'm going to just go through it very quickly, and then I'm going to talk about a part that probably I didn't emphasize on much in that video, which is specifically the idea of having intercourse with Milk-al-Yamin. First, in Islam, you cannot take a free person and turn them into a slave. That is impermissible in Islam. So you kidnap someone and turn them into a slave or whatever is impermissible. Prophet told us Allah is the enemy of 3 people. One of them is who takes a free person and turn them into a slave. So we don't have that. Prophet forbade us from using the term my slave, man or woman. So we don't use the term slave. That's why we say Milk-al-Yamin. We don't use the term slave because the Prophet forbade us from doing that. The Prophet told us that they are your brothers. Now listen, not your property, as we read in the Bible, not selling your own daughter for slavery or whatever, so she can satisfy her master. No, the Prophet tells us these are your brothers. Allah has put them under you. Now, meaning they will do service for you. And the Prophet said, feed them from what you eat, clothe them from what you wear, and do not overburden them in work. If you overburden them in any work, then help them. Islam teaches if you beat or do any harm, damage, like beating or lashing or whatever to any of your Milk-al-Yamin, which are not slaves, then they go free. You're not allowed to beat. They're not your property. You don't just beat them to death like the Bible teaches you to do. There's no such thing. The Prophet told us about them specifically. Not only the Prophet, the Quran teaches us. What does the Quran teach us? The Quran teaches that they can go free if they want. That's how they're not your property. How can they go free? They can go free by doing something called mukatab. So they can ransom themselves for money, or they can go and make a contract, and they can go to the judge directly. The person who has Milk-al-Yamin doesn't need to agree. It's a command from Allah to do mukataba if the Milk-al-Yamin asks for it. So they go to the judge and say, okay, for the exchange of this work or this amount of money or whatever, I want to go free, and they go free. They have the choice to do that. But even if they don't go, they do services for you in the house, but in exchange, they eat from what you eat, which means if you're eating caviar, they're going to eat caviar, which means if you're wearing Versace and whatever brands are there, they're going to wear the same thing. You don't overburden them in work. You help them. You cannot beat them. You cannot abuse them. These are the teachings of Islam. And if they want to go free and go ransom themselves, they can. And you can never take your own daughter or your own family member and sell them. That you don't not allowed to. I just told you, whoever takes a free person and sell them to slavery, Allah is their enemy and that's a major sin. Imagine your own family member. That's crazy. It's not even imaginable under an Islamic worldview. These are only biblical things. This doesn't exist in Islam. Now, how does a person become Milk-al-Yamin? We said it's not slavery because you don't beat them, you don't own them, you don't treat them like cattle or whatever, like the Bible teaches you. It doesn't exist. So this idea of slavery, the modern term, it doesn't exist. So how do they even become Milk-al-Yamin? It's only in war. Only unlike selling your own daughter. It's only in war. If there's a war between you and another party, like the Bible mentioned in Deuteronomy when we read. But do you take everyone as a servant? No, in Islam, it's not the same thing. It's not like if they give you peace, you take all of them no, Islam doesn't teach you that. It's what the Bible teaches. If you go to war and fight against another army, and then you take captives, now, do they become directly your Milk-al-Yamin? No, they don't become directly your right-hand position. They don't become that. The leader of the Muslims has different choices he can do. He can let them go free. He can ransom them for money. He can exchange them with other prisoners. He can even kill them. Or he can take them as Milk-al-Yamin, right-hand position. He can look at what is the best course of action. The Prophet, for example, when he took captives in the conquest of Mecca, he let them go free. So it just depends on what is most beneficial for the Muslims, the believers, and the wider context at the time. So it's not just about taking people as Milk-al-Yamin or whatever. And there are so many rules that if that woman, for example, has a son, then she becomes free later on if she has a son. That Milk-al-Yamin is not inherited, like we said. If she becomes your Milk-al-Yamin, if a woman becomes your Milk-al-Yamin, now talking about sex slave and intercourse with them. Now let's talk about specifically about this idea of having intercourse with them. Okay. First and foremost, we need to understand that times were very different from today. So whenever you take someone as a captive, they already understood and knew that a part of them being taken as a captive is that you're going to have intercourse with them. Now, we're not talking about, oh, the movie where the woman is screaming, no, you need my consent. I don't know, how could you do this? We're not talking about this. Life was not a movie that time. This was a part of reality. This idea of taking people as captives existed before Islam and existed time of Islam and existed after Islam. So when you take that captive, the woman already knows that this is going to happen. So you're not allowed to beat her and force her into it. That's not allowed. We already mentioned that in Islam. And that's not an Islamic behavior anyways, because the Prophet told us that they are our brothers. And if a woman is taken as Milk-al-Yamin and she doesn't want to have intercourse with you, she doesn't want, and she says, I want to go free, I want to do mukataba, I want to do the contract. The minute she does that, she asks for mukataba, then the person who has her is forced to do mukataba. And then when she does mukataba, he's not allowed to have intercourse with her. He cannot have intercourse with her. If she was pregnant, he cannot have intercourse with her. He have to wait for her until she gave birth. So there's many situations like this where Islam has all of these rules and commands that governs this idea. So if a woman is like, oh, no, I don't want to do it, she can do mukataba. She can, like I said, do this contract of mukataba and go free because she's not anyone's property. But if she doesn't, she's almost treated like a wife in every sense. She's living where you're living. She's eating from what you're eating. She's drinking from what you're drinking. And she's just helping around the house. And then that is how Islam prescribes dealing with Milk-al-Yamin. And now this idea of, like raping them or doing harm to them, this is not the character of Islam. And Islam teaches you to have ihsan, to have goodness with everything. That's what Islam teaches us. And we cannot harm or hate or do anything evil to those captives that we have. And like I said, if they don't want to have intercourse at all completely, then they have the way to go free. But most of the people who are taken as captives, they understood that is a part of being taken as a captive, and that's how societies functioned at that time. But they were treated with the utmost respect in Islam, and this is what Islam teaches. That's how you deal with women. Okay, and the Prophet ﷺ anyways told us not to kill any woman anymore. So women are not supposed to be fighting in war anyways in an Islamic narrative. But even we're saying if women came to war and we had taken captives as women, which are always going to be the minority because the majority are going to be men. And then those captives, like I said, there will be different options for the leader of Muslims today. But this idea, horrible idea of, taking sex slaves, and there was no such thing. It didn't exist at the time of Islam. They were treated with honor and respect. They understood that this intercourse is something that happens as an idea of being taken as a captive. There is a permissible form of intercourse in Islam. It is not something like adultery or fornication or whatever. God has made that permissible under all of the conditions that we mentioned. And as I said, if the woman, the end result, she's, I don't want to have it, okay, go make that contract of mukataba, and then there will be no intercourse taking place. If that woman has been taken by more than one person, then none of them can have intercourse with her. It's another ruling in Islam. So it's not just about the idea of having intercourse. The overwhelming majority of scholars believe if she had a husband, that they don't have intercourse with her. So like all of these rulings, Islam is not just about taking that person and just like having intercourse with them or whatever. It's not Christianity, You don't sell your own daughter over here and you take women for pleasure and you get your woman to satisfy the man that you sold. This is Christianity, not Islam. So to highlight that very, very clearly, if you get any Christian ever mentioning this stuff to you, just show them these verses and say, please. But in reality, even if the person is not a Christian, even if the person watches, look at all of these religions, even if you are a secular person, an atheist or whatever, it doesn't matter. In your worldview, there is no objective morality. You make up what is right and wrong according to you. Your wars today, look at Israel and what they're doing to captives, raping them in prisons or whatever. Look at wars today between Russia and Ukraine or whatever. Look at what it's happening to captives. Look at any war today. Everyone is ignoring. There's no such thing as international law or any of this nonsense or human rights or whatever. In war, the worst things happen. And there is no law that abides these people. But as Muslims, we have a law that abides us. And even though those people, the only way we can have Milk-al-Yamin is that people that were coming to kill you because it's in war. Even though those people are coming to kill you, Islam teaches you they are your brothers. You feed them from what you eat. You clothe them from your clothes. You don't hit them or harm them in that way. If they want to go free, they can do mukataba. That is the teaching of Islam, and it is the most merciful teaching you'll find. Christian, atheist, or whatever background you're going to come from, this is the most peaceful and beautiful teaching and balanced teaching at the same time that you're ever going to find in any worldview. All right, so let's see what we have next.
3 differences between Ahmadi Muslims and non-Ahmadi Muslims. Number 1, Khatm-e-Nubuwwat. Khatm-e-Nubuwwat is a belief that the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, is Khatam al-Nabiyyin, the seal of all the prophets. This belief is common amongst all Muslims. The difference simply lies in its interpretation. Non-Ahmadis believe Khatam to mean the last, that prophethood has forever been sealed with the coming of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. We Ahmadi Muslims, however, believe that this term means that the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, is the seal par excellence of prophethood, meaning that he is the greatest of all prophets in status, and that no new prophet can come without the authority of his teachings.
Now, you see this funny thing about Ahmadi and non-Ahmadi Muslims. The truth is, it's Muslims and non-Muslims. There's no such thing as Ahmadi and non-Ahmadi Muslims. Well, what kind of funny terms are these? And by non-Ahmadi Muslims, they mean the 2 billion that exist on the planet. And by Ahmadi, they mean those group of people who were, by the British Empire, they made this guy called Mirza Ghulam come out of nowhere and pretend that he was a prophet of God or something. Yeah. So it's Muslims and non-Muslims. That's the truth, no matter which way you want to look at it. It's Muslims and a complete new religion called Ahmadism, which are not Muslims. Now, those people who call themselves Ahmadis or they're called Qadianis, or whatever term you want to use for them, it's funny. Look, he is saying Muslims, I'm going to say Muslims for us, for non-Ahmadis. Muslims interpret it this way and we interpret it this way. It's not about interpretation. The verse of the Quran, literally, chapter 33, verse 40 of the Quran, it says, وَخَاتَمَ النَّبِيِّينَ, which means the seal. What's funny, it says like seal of excellence, and the seal of the prophets. This is one way to read the verse, but there's another way to read the verse, وَخَاتِمَ النَّبِيِّينَ, which means the last. So we don't interpret it. It's not about interpretation. The Quran literally says that the Prophet Muhammad is the last messenger. He's the last and final messenger among the messengers. Now, this is the other funny thing, is that those Qadianis or whatever, they accept the Islamic narrative. But when you look at the Islamic narrative, the Prophet himself, what did he say? How did he understand the verse? How did the early Muslims understood this verse? You have all of these traditions. First, you have the Quran saying that Allah has perfected our religion. Something is perfect is 100%. You don't add to it. You don't subtract from it. That's it. It's done. It's completed. So Allah says He's perfected our religion in chapter 5 of the Quran. The Prophet ﷺ, he tells us that there is nothing else, whoever innovates anything that is not from this religion is rejected. He tells us there's nothing that is going to bring us closer to Allah and closer to paradise except that He told us. There's nothing that is going to take us away from hellfire except that He forbade us from. So He's already told us the whole religion has been delivered. Did He stop there? No. The Prophet told us that I am the seal, the final, last messenger. There's no prophet to come after me. And He mentioned how 30 liars will come after Him, each of them claiming to be the messenger of God. And He says, وَلَا نَبِيَّ بَعْدِ, there is no messenger, there's no prophet after me. No prophet or messenger, because for each messenger, for you to be messenger, you have to be a prophet. So the Prophet is saying there is nobody that is going to come after him, clearly and explicitly. So we don't interpret anything as Muslims, You guys just twist and change the meaning, like seal of excellence. I don't know what seal of excellence means. It's the final and last prophet. This is what the verse of the Quran is literally saying. Avoid it from any interpretation. This is the literal meaning of the verses. Now, is that it? No, he's also saying something else.
There is no clearer explanation of this than the quotation of Hazrat Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, where she said, say he is Khatam al-Nabiyyin, but do not say that there is no prophet after him. It really doesn't get much clearer than that.
So now he quotes a narration from Aisha radiallahu anha. Now, keep in mind, look, this narration is not from the Prophet Muhammad. It's a narration from one of the wives of the Prophet. That's it. So he ignored everything I just told you, which is the Prophet said. And he ignores, they conveniently pick and choose. They ignore everything the Prophet, peace be upon him, said. They ignore everything all of the other companions said. They ignore all of the things that are in the Quran that I mentioned to you, which clearly shows they ignore the clear literal wording of the Quran. And they hold on to one statement, Aisha radiallahu anha, that they misunderstood. And then they go and run away with it. So they mention this narration and they bring Ad-Durr al-Manthur by As-Suyuti. And the funny thing, if you go to Ad-Durr al-Manthur by As-Suyuti, what does As-Suyuti do? As-Suyuti, the first thing he does, he brings the verse of the Quran, obviously, chapter 33, verse 40 of the Quran. And this is the exegesis on the Quran. Then the first thing he does is he mentions how the Prophet said that his example and his parable on him and the other prophets is like a beautiful palace. Is missing one building stone. And people walk by and they say, only if that building stone is put, then it will be a perfect palace. And then the Prophet said, I'm that last building stone, and there will be no prophet after me. Then As-Suyuti also mentions the narration I told you about, there will be 30 liars after me, each of them claiming I'm the messenger of God. So As-Suyuti here is refuting them, basically, in this same source of information they're bringing. And he's bringing all of these narration about how Prophet Muhammad is the last and final messenger. Then he brings the statement of Aisha radiallahu anha, which they're also misunderstood because they're not bringing the full narration. Because if you go to the full narration, what does Aisha radiallahu anha, what is she speaking about when she says do not say the last prophet. She's referring to a very specific thing. Very, very, very specific thing. So we have Muhammad ibn Sirin. He reports from Aisha. What did she say? She said, do not say there is no prophet after Prophet Muhammad, but say the seal of the prophets. Because Isa, Jesus, will descend as a just ruler, and then he will kill the Dajjal, and he will break the cross, and he will do all of these things. She is referring specifically, not that there is a new prophet that is going to come called Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiari, as these people believe. Some Indian guy, in India that the British Empire paid money so he can create separation between Muslims. They're not talking about that. They're not talking about a liar that is going to come later on, one of those 30 liars. She's talking specifically about Jesus, the son of Mary, that is going to come in the end of times to kill the Dajjal and do all of these things, which Mirza Ghulam Ahmad never did. Yeah, she's not talking about him. She's talking about Jesus, peace be upon him, coming down at the end of times, breaking the cross, killing the swine, and killing the Dajjal, etc. So when she says do not say, she's referring to that, meaning do not say that Jesus is not coming back. This is what she's referring to. Do not say that prophet is not going to come again on the second coming. This is what she's referring to. But she's not in any way, shape, or form denying that there is no other new prophets that are going to come after the Prophet Muhammad. So your belief and your twisting of events is not going to work, because either way you want to look at it, the source you brought is refuting you. Aisha herself is refuting you, and the Quran and the prophetic tradition is refuting you. And the truth is, you guys are not Muslims. You're a new religion created by the British Empire to seed division among Muslims, and that's what it is. Okay, so let's see what we have here. We have Piers Morgan. You guys know him very well. He flip-flops from position onto another. Recently, he's taken a clear position on Palestine issue, saying that he is with Palestine now. But obviously, he says that which is going to garner him the better audience and more traction, etc. Either way, we are happy that he's turned into the light side. But there is this specific video clip of him, which is about a separate topic that I would like to talk about him with Neil deGrasse Tyson, or whatever his name is. I found very interesting. I just wanted to briefly comment on it. So let's see what you're going to say.
Here's my question for you. What was there before nothing?
We don't know.
Right. So here's
it's
my
okay
point.
to not know. That's the whole point of science.
No, but
the
that's
whole point of science is go where you don't know the answer.
That's why I believe in God, because there has to be a superior thing out there which can answer that question logically.
Yeah, so that's not an invocation of logic. That's an invocation of what philosophers have historically called the God of the gaps. The God of the gaps is, you look at where science has yet to tread, where science has yet to figure out, and you say, wow, that's mysterious. I don't know how that works. God must have done it. There's a long, storied history of people thinking this way.
Now, you see, this is the funny part about what this guy's saying. He talks about God of the gaps, but then he brings up something which I'd like to call science of the gaps, or I don't know of the gaps. He says things which science is yet to discover. So he assumes and presumes that already science is going to be able to explain whatever that question that you have in mind is. And we understand in reality that science is a limited tool. Science, as Muslims developed it, by the way, Hassan ibn al-Haytham and Andalusia developed the modern scientific method that we have today, which is to study the physical world, the material world, that which you can put under a microscope. You study it, and through experimentation and repeatability and falsification. This method, we understand its limitations. It's limited to the physical world. That's why, for example, science does not study consciousness. They have something called the hard problem of consciousness. Can even define consciousness, let alone tell you more about it, because it's not a physical thing that you can put under a microscope. Here he's asking about the beginning of the universe. We know that all of the equations that we have don't apply at that time. We cannot use the scientific method to figure out what was going on that time, because there was no time-space continuum. It didn't start. There's no universe the way we know it. We can never know what was there before, what caused that universe, what brought it into existence, which is a question that they refuse to answer. He just says, I don't know. I don't know doesn't negate the fact that there has to be something that caused, that brought the energy and matter into existence, and then expanded the universe the way we have it. And having all these magnificent, intricate laws, it just doesn't happen on its own. It needs by necessity a cause. And whatever that cause is greater than any human conception. And that is, my friend, is logic. You cannot have the universe without that, without something that causes it, that has this attributes that I just mentioned. That is the logic, my friend. Now, to say science is going to know that in the future, that is the science of the gaps, my friend. That's not logic. That's not you being clever and saying, oh, the people are just using God. No. People are not just using God, but people are saying rationally, whatever that causes the universe will need to have It's not limited by time space the way we are, which means it's eternal, sees the future. It causes the universe that is full of energy. It has power we cannot even comprehend. It has knowledge that we can't even know about because of all of these gravitational systems and laws that within the universe. And without all of these things I'm mentioning, you cannot have a universe. So it's a fact that there has to be a creator. There's no gaps there. The gap is that you're trying to apply universe to bring some sort of a physical expression because you're a naturalist. You believe that everything happens through physical processes, but that cannot be proven because you cannot prove science itself with physical processes. You have to rely on philosophy, mathematics, and other things, other abstract things. Science is limited, my friend. It doesn't know everything, and it doesn't explain everything in the universe, and it will and never will. So for you to pretend that what Piers Morgan, for obviously his low skills and lack of expertise in these kind of argumentations about theology, for you to kind of try to garner on that and pretend that he's doing God of the gaps when you are doing science of the gaps, it doesn't work here. But he then brings an interesting example. I just wanted to like briefly comment on that. But before that, I also want to say that you see, the Quran also talks about of arrogance, how the people who don't believe in God are arrogant. And this is the reality. The reality is these people are arrogant because they believe they know everything. The humans have the ability to know everything. If we don't know it today, we'll know it tomorrow. We can know everything. Everything we can have an explanation for. We know everything as human beings. So they want to be gods themselves. That is the reality. They want to be believing that they have the tools. Look, we knew nothing. The time of Zeus and Thor or whatever. Look at us now today. We are so great. And it just comes from point of ego and arrogance and someone who wants to believe that he wants to take the role of that creator that created everything. So let's see what other example he's bringing quickly.
Let's go back to AD 150. Claudius Ptolemy, brilliant Alexandrian mathematician, polymath. He wrote in the margin of one of his greatest works, he said, after looking at the planets going back and forth, not fully understanding why they did this, and he writes, "When I trace at my pleasure the windings to and fro of the heavenly bodies, I no longer touch earth with my feet. I stand in the presence of Zeus himself and take my fill of ambrosia." He was feeling it, okay? He's invoking religion. It's a beautiful quote. It's one of my favorite quotes ever, by the way. And what I'm saying here is he did not understand the planets and he invokes deity to help him out. That's what you just did, but on a different frontier, because we know why the planets go back and forth. Newton got that figured out, and Kepler. So if, to you, God is where science has yet to tread,
Yeah.
then God is an ever-receding pocket of scientific ignorance.
Now, you see, this is the funny part. He brought this quotation, which I find beautiful, of course, except the Zeus part, because we know that's not like a reality or anything. But he misunderstands it. That person marveling at the movement of the planets and then feeling that he's no longer on Earth, he's become a celestial body, one with them. He's marveling at the magnificence of the system that governs these orbits. Now, today, we discovered that there is a system. That's what science did. But we didn't discover who put that system in place. Why is there a system? Coming back again to the question of Piers Morgan. Who caused the universe and then allowed it to have this magnificent system that allows this beautiful movement of planets and stars and glow of galaxies that you observe? So that man, his quotation, if he applied it to God and not Zeus, is perfectly in line. And it's not about him not understanding the movement of planets. It's a caveat that you added. That is how you as an atheist look at it. But it's him marveling and wondering and looking at the beautiful system that is being placed by God. That today, we know that there's a system, but you and your science is still not answering who has placed that system, my friend. So I hope you one day leave your science of the gaps and come to the logic, because it is logic, of the one who brought the universe that we have today in this magnificent system into existence.